Good morning. Very pleased to be speaking in front of you this morning. And as you were speaking, one of the things that you wanted to hear about was not just what we do that is different, but how we do things differently. And one of the things that we do differently at Singtel is really the collaboration that happens between big data and market research. And that's why I'm really pleased to be speaking with Amy, my colleague, because we really try to work together and we don't separate big data and market research. We sit together every day and we try to figure out how to interpret customer behavior and patterns about their behavior and try to figure out a holistic way of looking at customers. And this is something very special we feel in our collaboration, and that's what we'd like to talk about today. So if you could go forward. Okay, thank you. So I think one of the things that we know is that Asia is always online, and from Nielsen we know that in developed Asia, pretty much everyone has access to internet, whether or not that's data or Wi-Fi. But what's really interesting is that when you look at developing Asia, Wi-Fi, people have such a great desire to connect that even in places where there is really limited connection, think places like Indonesia, India, or the Philippines, people will go to public spaces. And the desire to connect is so great that when they do connect, they equal levels of places like Australia. It's not clicking. Okay. But what's actually more interesting is that people will stay on their phones for more than a quarter of the day, which makes a virtual companion. And in fact, this might be understated because, as we know, people sleep with their phones, which is actually quite disturbing. On the other hand, what is also a little bit interesting is that people underclaim a lot of the activities. They think they browse the web a lot less. They think they're on Facebook a lot less, but they're actually a lot more checking Facebook a lot more throughout the workday, which I'm sure we're all guilty of. And they think that they text a lot less, a lot more, but they're actually online, WeChat, and WhatsApp a lot more. So why is this important to us? Well, we at Singtel, we actually have 500 million mobile customers. We're at the pulse of digital Asia. And it's really important to us to understand how people behave, how people think, what they do with their mobile phones. Because it's part and parcel of their daily life, and it's part and parcel of their consumption. And if we can think about every day what big patterns are, as well as what the individual activities are, and put those together, then we are able to really deliver, unique products and services with creative value propositions that make us stand out in the market. So we thought to ourselves, how do we create something that addresses the needs of the customers and delivers innovation that is at the life cycle of technology? Because traditional market research can only do so much, right? We know that 4 to 6 weeks of fieldwork sometimes is not sufficient to answer the needs of these customers. When you have version 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 popping up every 2 weeks, you need something that can help you innovate and iterate much faster. So therefore, the Digital Advisors Experience was born, and we worked with Vision Critical to bring this together. And really, what it is really putting together an online platform where we connected the brand and the customer and really created an engaging experience that allowed for convenient, interesting activities that was a seamless experience, whether it was on a mobile, a PC, or a tablet, and allowed for us to have a continuous dialogue with the customers. What did that allow Singtel to have? It allowed us to have a platform for iterative and continuous learning and allowed for constant feedback. Now, over the last 3 years, we've built 3 panels across the region. So that represents about 12,000 members in Singapore, Australia, and now Indonesia. And that's about 150 million subscribers. Are they representative of our total base? No. And it's designed to be that way. These are our leading edge customers in every market. They're digitally savvy, and we want them to be that way because they're testing our products. If the products don't pass with them, they won't pass with the rest of the market. So we want them to be engaged and excited about our products. They are so frank that if we test a product with them, they will continue telling us much long after the test is complete that the product sucks. And they're very frank about it. Sometimes they will curse at us because it's so horrible. But at the same time, they'll pat us on the back if it's something that they really love. And they will be advocates for us. And just to a snapshot on Singtel, this was one of our anchor communities. It's 4,200 members strong. We have a 50% engagement level, which is very high. We've completed almost 200 activities, and I call them activities because they're not surveys. We ask them to do app trials. We ask them to take pictures of the food they eat. We ask them to do concept tests. We ask them to come in for focus groups. Sometimes you also ask them to come in for co-creation workshops. So they're very engaged, and they do meet our product owners. So it is not a distant relationship with a product. And what's happening is that we're also learning that they've become more sensitive to technology. Whereas a year ago, 60% of them were using single screen, single devices. Now, 4 out of 10 are using single device, and the rest are toggling between multiple devices. Next, please. And what's happening now is because of the speed at which we get responses, we typically like to send out surveys on Thursdays for Singapore. And we've studied the patterns between each community because each community is special and different. In Singapore, if you send out a survey on Thursday, by Sunday you have 1,500 responses. It's that quick. By Monday you have a report to the business owner, and by Tuesday you have a list of action points at the operational meeting. And that's the way we like to operate. That's earned us a seat at every operational meeting. And I'm very proud to say that each of my team members sits at the operational meetings, not as somebody who takes a research brief and takes down notes, but as somebody who voices out what the customers say and provides real input. It's also augmented the need for additional research because now people want to know why. They want more qualitative research. They want more external research because they want to do market sizing. They want to start doing opportunity mapping. They want to do co-creation workshops. They want more of what's and whys ever before. And it's increased collaboration between business units. And suffice to say, our stakeholders are pleased because every business decision, every business case goes up to our management. The question is asked, has this been tested? Has this been tested on the panel? And the basic question that underpins that is this insight driven? What is the insight behind this? And that's a question that used to be not raised, but now it's core to every discussion. And our panel members are delighted because we also make an effort to tell them through our newsletter what their feedback means to us, what innovations have arisen because of their feedback, even if it's tweaks to an app. They feel they're the product owners. If you read through some feedback, which I won't, they believe that their opinions matter. If they've given an opinion on what the social messaging, what their social messaging habits are, it's evolved into an app, then it's evolved into version 2, and then they believe they're product developers. And we know that one size doesn't fit all, so we've come up with different ways of asking questions. So it's not just about the topic, but it's the question and how you ask it. So we try to make it interactive, we try to make it fun. We put a lot of thought into this. And if you ask us, well, what do you ask about? It could be anything as exciting as topics like gaming, which draw about responses about 75%. Or it could be as mundane as, how would you like your bill to look? But of course, we never ask it that way, right? But that garners response of close to 50%. Something as personal and very difficult to answer, such as, when is it appropriate to get an SMS about a personal loan? That people are even willing to tell us about that. A third will respond to that. And app tests get 75% responses. So we try to mix it up. And that gives us this kind of engagement level. And what's also interesting is our stakeholders have learned to use our communities very well. In the case of Newsloop, it started off with just a post-launch analysis. How do people respond to the app? And then they said, okay, why don't we test the design of the cover page? So they started looking at the design and functionality. And then I said, okay, what about emotional response testing? Can they handle this? And I said, sure, why don't we try it? So we worked in collaboration with our design experience team. Then next they said, can we try a competitor landscape? So we've also worked with the stakeholders, and they've become more sophisticated in the use of the advisors. We've also done things like segmented the whole panel to look at movie watching habits, then pulled out groups to do focus groups based on those segments, and then pulled out creative consumers to do co-creation workshops. And if we could just click on the next, just to show you a little bit of what we do with them, so you can mix qual and quant. Here's a little snippet. We've blurred the lines. People have become so comfortable in the company to talk to customers. Before, it was all about, let's stand behind the screen and watch the FGD, or why don't we just watch the video? And we're happy about that. Now they're very comfortable to be in the room and listen and co-create with the customers. And I think that's a major step change in mindset. The other thing we'd like to talk about is in MEO TV, the network guys have told us, can you tell us how customers define screen freeze? Because in technical terms, we have 4 different types of screen freeze. But when a customer defines it, the screen just freezes. So we need to understand what that means. And so when you have engineers coming to us and asking us for a customer definition, you know you've made a difference. But what's actually really exciting about MEO TV is we can actually also map back to what's happening in the back end and figure out what people are watching, really watching versus what they're claiming. So we're able to map back some of the big data and put that together into some actionable points. So I could go on and on about some case studies, and of course there's lots of great benefits, but what's really wonderful is the kind of change that you have and experience when you are able to impact the way the business works together. And what's wonderful too is when people start looking for insight as a way to solve problems. And it doesn't matter now where the insight comes from, whether it's an in-depth interview with one high-frequency user of a particular product, or if it's looking at patterns of behavior, or if it's when you meld all 3 into one use case. It's the fact that insight is seen as an essential part of making decisions. And what we're really excited to share about is how we put those 2 together, because that's when the real power comes. So I'd like to introduce Amy, because she's going to show us how we move that needle.
We're talking about what's next. So what can be done differently? I think with the market research, one of the challenges is you always have to largely rely on what people say they do. So I'm a data person, and we know people behavior. We know some of the data. We actually should know much better before we're asking the question to them. So the question is, how can we enable, market researchers in the new kind of a new way of mobile? We can give them the behavior we know of, and so they can find the right target, asking the right questions, and interpret their answers much easily, with this capability. So that's where the innovation kind of ideas we come from. So in the R&D lab, we did a little experiment work, which is basically building a interactive and a visual platform where enable our market researchers to be able to see some of the behavioral patterns and also come up with certain characteristics and personas, so they can, focus on this is my right target audience. So it's basically our idea is to enable the what's with the why's on the larger scale. So I'm going to show you how we do this in our experimental work. Please go on to the next one. So this is me, right? So this is my personal data. So I give consent to look at what is my behavior, basically. So this is the experimental platform we built in here. Please just click. So I have 1 month's worth of data, and then you can see some key locations. So this is my home. And then we do the triangulation, you can find them. And this is my work in Somerset, so you can see the key places of the hotspots over the whole month. And then mostly I'm around home and I'm around work. And I have quite a few points in the airport. So this is my weekday pattern. And then if you look at, zoom into, this is a daily routine. So my 8 o'clock, I've set off and I've gone to work. Please carry on. So I'm at work, and then it zoomed into the lunchtime. I gone to 313 for my lunch, and then in the evening, I set off home. So about 8 o'clock, I get back to home. So this is my daily kind of a routine pattern. How about my travel? So you can see on a Thursday, and I left home at 5 o'clock, and then I have the trays gone to the airport, and I was away for 5 days because I disappeared from our network. And then when I come back the next 5 days later, you can also see the trays coming back from the airport. So this is a travel pattern we can identify. And then if you look at the next one, it also look a little bit kind of short of things, but I can't see any point at the airport, then it's a guess, but I don't know. But the previous trip, I definitely know I've gone overseas. So this is, how about my evenings, right? My evenings, one of the days, I left the work and I gone to City Hall area. Gone to City Hall area. So that was the time. Sorry, just go back one more, please. Yeah. So this is the time I spent around the area I was, and then about 11 o'clock I started going home. So occasionally, evening out. And then what about the next one, which is my weekends? So around the whole of the weekends, I'm mostly around home. So didn't really go much back to the town. Occasionally go to shopping, which is around the city, around the Vivol City area. And I've also gone somewhere up north. So this is the reservoir area. And MOQ, this is quite strange, because if you ask me, have you gone to MOQ on one of the Saturdays, I would definitely say no. But here, actually, then I remembered it was a friend's barbecue. It was in the Nanyang Poly. So kind of sometimes the facts just kind of beat my memory. So on the whole, you can see from the behavioral pattern over just the months what, let's go on to the next one, please. Okay, sorry, forgot my communication. So we're a mobile company, there's always communication. So this is the location pattern of where I use my phones and how much do I use my phones. So you can see in the office, I mostly use my phone calls. And also some of the SMS, but mostly around kind of a pickup time in the evenings. And data, I'm commuting time, is strong using that. So here is my phone, and I'm a light user, actually not that heavy. And I use phone and SMS mainly for work purpose, and then data is for my weekends. So then so you can't do this for every single person. So the method is to generalize a persona to represent a lifestyle like me. So I'm a professional, so all this stuff as the key characteristics I pull out as a core building blocks to describe a person. And then on the next one, we have, so this is basically the prototype we built to provide a behavioral-based persona generation platform, and they give you a user interface, and then combined with Melissa's digital advisor with all the great stuff which you currently be doing. So this really enabled the market researchers to look at the audience from a brand new lens and then really focus on what they can ask. And the questions, the whys, is much more relevant to the people, and you can also interpret the context and interpret their answers much easily. So I guess this is about the better decisions and are made when you can see a bigger picture. So the advantages is you have the scale, and then you have the time spans, and then you have the level of sophistication. It doesn't kind of start from zero when you talk to your customers, and it is changing over time based on what behavior change, and is give full control to the panelists. If they want to share, they don't want to share, then you can't use this. So this is the basic 100% opt-in for this methodology.
Well, I guess for us at Singtel, the way that we think about this is what's next is really what Amy and I have both been talking about. It's really the next generation of behavioral-driven market research, right? It's three things. One, it's the big picture. It's the combining the what's and the whys. It's looking at consumer behavior from two lenses, from a different perspective. It's not just asking the questions, it's understanding the context, because you're looking at patterns and then asking more relevant questions, and creating personas, not just looking at individuals and aggregates, but then looking at what kind of profiles are you building, and how relevant are these profiles. The second is, what kind of ideation does this bring about? Does this create new business opportunities and new business ideas for our business owners? The second is, are you now using the market research that you have with the right audience? Are you just throwing out a larger net to a larger audience, or are you asking people directly because you know better, because you know more, and you're using your research dollars in a more efficient manner? And you're able to test and observe, because you're now using patterns and behavior, and you're able to test things out and look at things at scale. And that's where the measurement comes in, because now we're able to look at things, observe patterns, and create hypotheses. And now we're able to test and measure at scale. And I think this is one of the most exciting things that we like to work on. And we're very pleased to share this with you.
In following with the conference agenda, should I say marvelous, Melissa? That was a fantastic presentation. I know, from the timeline, it seems like you've been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years. I haven't come across personally, at least, many other such success stories. So would you like to share with us the 2 or 3 key hurdles that you sort of put aside to put this success in place?
Some of the research hurdles have been, actually it's really in anything, in creating the insight, one of the things that we often encounter is this valid? Right? That's a question we always get asked. Is what you're doing valid? Is it not rep? Is the sample big enough? Should we be looking at more? And so we always have to explain that, yes, it's all right to talk to a smaller sample, because even if a sample is smaller, but they're the right focused individuals, they can give you robust answers. And I think whether it's looking at personas that we create through the experiments because they give us the deep insights, or it's because you're talking to a cadre of digitally savvy customers that give you consistently rich longitudinal data that proves its value over time. That's what's changed the mindset of our stakeholders. But it was definitely the biggest hurdle to be always asked, is this valid? Because people were used to large numbers. And then to come to them and say, we're only going to talk to this group, or we're only going to look at this person and this behavior, and talk about hypothesis, that was actually quite a leap.
Maybe I'll just add on that point. So we've done an experiment last year on 500 people. So we're basically asking about 400 different questions every day. and then we see if people consistently answer them the same way or the answer is actually coherent. And then we also sent out lots of offers and see what people redeem. So the outcome is very interesting. What people say they like, they actually not consistent at all. So there's inconclusive from whatever you say you are, but from the offer redemptions is clearly when you say, I like BP as a brand, and all your redemptions are mostly going to BP, where when you ask people, they would not say, I have a brand preference in terms of a petrol usage. So that's kind of really strengthen our beliefs. We need to bring in more behavior-based, maybe answer the whys. We can't really do because you don't know why people do that, but at least you get a better understanding of what do you do in the first place and really finding out why people do that to support your insight.
Is it correct to assume that this would have involved very significant amount of time from your own research team and a lot of support from management, because this is sort of unlike a traditional research project, right, which you can leave to a agency to complete. It seems like you invest a lot of time at your end on this platform.
That's why we have to collaborate closely. This, of course, we do have. This is something that we work on. We have our side projects and we have our mainstream projects, but this is something we allocate our time to because it's important. We have hypotheses to prove, just like anything, and this is something we believed in.